behalf of the Chamber, thank you so very much for your attendance today of what we consider not only a relevant topic for all of us, but such a critically important topic for our future. As a matter of introduction, I am Tom Huff, and it's my privilege to serve as the Metro Chamber Chair for Atlanta Public Schools, working with many of you in the room here, as well as other businesses across the Metro Chamber area, working with our future in public schools. Today would not have been possible without the very generous and meaningful sponsorship of AT&T. And here with us today is Pete Martin, Vice President, Regulatory and External Affairs of Georgia. And Pete, would you please stand and accept all of our appreciation on behalf of your sponsorship. I heard one of your phones just going off, okay? It was one of yours. You can tell by the ring. And so we thank you for your generosity, and please carry the message back about what it means to our future. And speaking briefly with Pete, they have been a long-term supporter and interest, obviously, through Dick Anderson's leadership of our chamber, and we really appreciate today very much. Additionally, we have with us the chairman of the Metro Chamber of Commerce, Dick Anderson. We'd like to please ask him to stand. Give a round of applause. The chairman and the board are responsible for setting the agenda, and I can assure you that in Dick's eyes, this is number one priority. He has devoted countless hours of committee time, his time, and the resources to our public schools effort, and we thank you so very much for that, Dick. Indeed, it's a hot topic. Yesterday evening and this morning, WXIA Channel 11 television aired a short piece on today's hot topic, public schools, and let's take a look.
Good Wednesday evening, everyone. In our Consumer Money headlines, as high schools face a critical challenge of preparing students for a highly competitive global economy, a partnership tonight between Atlanta high schools and the business community. It's designed to boost graduation rates and keep students motivated. Forget just reading, writing, and arithmetic. High school is now studying law, research, computers, and engineering, and tied to it, pre-college courses at Georgia State. It's a $60 million long-range effort now at Carver High School and soon to be at both Terrell and Douglas. Atlanta's Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Beverly Hall, says smaller learning groups mean
teachers will know the students will be given more relevant and rigorous coursework, and where we will have a business advisory council for every one of those schools. There'll be themes or career focuses within each school. Students will have internships, teachers externships, so the teachers know what skills the workforce really requires, and there'll be mentors for those children.
The president of the Metro Atlanta Chamber of Commerce, Sam Williams, wants to keep trained graduates in the Metro.
For the sake of our whole Georgia economy, we can't afford to continue to import our workforce from somewhere else. We've got to grow our own young people and get them qualified for jobs. We need to get them to understand that there are exciting things they could do in high school that is not that far of a jump for a job, whether it's right out of high school or 2 or 4 years of additional school.
Dr. Hall meets with the Atlanta business community tomorrow to fully outline the transformation program. I'm Bill Liss, and have a really good evening.
It's a wonderful piece. And for those familiar with the chamber, you could see that take was actually from the roof of the chamber building here. And so it was a wonderful evening, and our very own Dr. Hall, which we'll introduce in a moment, was speaking on our behalf. The efforts on public schools is something that, as I mentioned, involves many. And as you saw in the clip, it's an effort with both financial resources, but it also takes a component not only of volunteerism, but of those of our elected officials. And I think as we look over the Metro Chamber, we are fortunate, so very fortunate to have our officials that understand the challenge of public schools, what we're trying to accomplish. And so by attending today, continuing to voice their support, not only with their time, but their presence. And so I'd like all of our elected officials to please stand so we can warmly welcome and thank you for what you've done and what you're doing. Please stand. I hope those in attendance will seek out our officials at the conclusion of the program to say, number one, thank you, but also have a dialogue. Today's program is about a dialogue on a topic so important to all of us. They carry the message for us, they represent us, and I hope you'll again seek them out. And so I'll ask them to raise their hand one more time in case you missed that homework assignment. Track them down, say thank you, and engage in that very important dialogue. Today's program will be customary for those who have attended before. This is the fourth in a series of hot topic forums, and I will essentially be moderating, but we have the privilege of having four wonderful presenters. They each have a topical matter of which they'll cover, and then at the conclusion of their short presentation, we'll open the floor to questions to that particular presenter. We'll move along, and our timeline will be concluding by 1:30, at which time we'll have an open forum for all of our presenters. So look forward to their content, and be thoughtful as your questions, and again, with the theme of a dialogue. Many of you are familiar with the Metro Chamber's partnership with Atlanta Public Schools, and the vehicle that's often referred to as Atlanta Partners for Education. And it truly is an outstanding example that matches businesses with schools to support student achievement. And we have over 200 business partners, many again here today, and 3,700 volunteers that support time, in cash, and in-kind contributions to the furtherment of our youth. Recently, we're pleased to announce that there's been the creation of a Business Council Advisory Board that will be chaired by Dick Anderson. And this will communicate workforce skill needs directly to Atlanta Public Schools. So again, continuing the dialogue with administration and bringing the voice of opportunity, bringing the business voice to what the potential exists to create that motivating force for a quality education. This is just one of many initiatives that are underway, all positive trends, as you'll hear throughout the presentations, and yet there's much to be done. And we hope that as you see these presentations today, you'll join us in the effort as we move forward. You will hear more about high school transformation later in the program with the addition of Rob Atterbury. But first, we're going to hear from Russ Moore on national trends, and then we'll follow Russ with Tad Hutchison, who has just joined us. Tad, you didn't get a chance to have lunch. Oh, you did the best part of lunch. You can tell he's well educated, right? We sit at the table. Why do we have to get through the first plate to get to the second plate? It's the second plate that caught our eye, so welcome, Tad. Glad he had another commitment and was able to make it. As we look at national trends, we've invited Russ Moore, who's the founder of Seamless Education Consultants. He works with communities all over Georgia and beyond, and really helping start career academics. It's a blend of academics with career and technical education, high school and college, all with a business thread. Mr. Moore has served as a business partner, then progressing to the member of the board of directors, and finally, through their good observation of his talents, became CEO of Georgia's National Model High School for Seamless Education and Workforce Development. The name is Central Educational Center in Noonan, of which he's also a proud graduate of their public school system. Mr. Moore graduated from Arizona State University, and through that Association for Leadership of Educational Entrepreneurship has become widely known as an expert in his field that he'll be presenting on today. So please welcome Russ Moore to the Metro Chamber and give him a warm round of applause.
Thank you, Tom. And in the tradition of consultants worldwide, I'm going to begin by giving you a test before I've taught you anything. If I can make this work. If you'll do it for me, Katie. What is that? Anybody? Well, no doubt you recognize it as a Rorschach blot, right? and unlike most Rorschach tests, there is, in fact, a correct answer to this one. Go ahead, next one. It is, or it could be, well, you know what, there we are. It is what could happen to a high school dropout who's run over by the real world. Represented by somebody's great big monster tire. Actually, dropouts have been a major concern for a long time, but it wasn't always the case. If you look back a generation, and this is national data about the workforce from 1968, 65% of the jobs in our country, you could access those jobs if you had a high school diploma or if you dropped out of high school, in fact. Training beyond high school, but less than a full 4-year degree, was about 15% of the economy. And the 4-year or higher college degree accounted for 20% of the jobs in the economy in 1968. Fast forward to just a few years ago. Look what's changed and look what has not changed. Same data, same country, big change. 20% still the same. The jobs in our economy that you have to have a 4-year degree or higher to access are still about 20%, 1/5 of the jobs in this country. But the training beyond high school now requires that level of sufficiency to get 70% or more of the jobs. And, of course, this is a few years old. And that high school or less is disappearing. And, in fact, projections are that it will go away. And, in fact, I challenge you, you are business people, how many of you would even interview somebody who doesn't have a high school diploma? And how many of you would interview and hire somebody who has no training beyond that high school diploma? It's a fair question. And I think it's really already gone. So now, back to our test, what's this? Well, today, this is what happens to a high school graduate who's not prepared for that first day of work or that first day of college because of what they've learned in their K-12 experience. We've just shifted the burden. It's no longer just dropouts. Now we have to be sure that the graduates themselves are truly prepared for what comes. That we still do focus on dropouts, and properly so. This is a study that came out funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the same benefactors of APS and Dr. Hall for the transformation of high schools here. This is data that I'm sure they're using and they're planning. The dropouts in our country, 47% to our shame, are dropping out not because they're in trouble academically, but because they're bored. They are not engaged by their classes. 69% are not motivated or inspired. 45% are not prepared, in their opinion, by their earlier schooling to get out of high school. And perhaps to our shame, to the highest degree, 70% think they could have graduated if they had tried. This is what they said about themselves, the dropouts. That's shameful, and that's depressing, and that's bad news. But we do have some good news. We have a crisis, but we now know more about that crisis, thanks to researchers like the Gates Foundation and Part Research Associates, thanks to people like APS who are taking that data and doing locally relevant work with it. We know now that we don't really have a crisis of intelligence. We have a crisis of relevance. And we can do something about that. Let's look at what you had to say. This is a report from 2005 by Deloitte, commissioned by the National Association of Manufacturers. 81% of the respondents to that survey, all of whom are manufacturers nationwide, report that they are facing a moderate to severe shortage of qualified workers, and that has gotten worse since their initial report in 2001. They are also reporting that changing job requirements are necessitating some level of technical training beyond high school in all jobs. So that unskilled job, the high school dropout especially, is gone. It's a thing of the past. And the final very significant report they had was that they're not happy with the quality of education in the K-12 sector. And we have to take that to heart. Think tanks have gotten in the act too. Here's the National Summit on Competitiveness that came out last year in Washington. efforts by schools to bolster math and science, which have clearly been identified as perhaps the two most important academic areas that we must make progress on as a nation to compete globally. These will be more effective if they're supplemented by public-private efforts. And who are we today? We have public officials who raise their hands. We are mostly business people here today. That's public, that's private. That's what we're all about. And of course, here we have the grand poobah of Chambers of Commerce. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce, last year, for the first time in the U.S. Chamber's history, announced that they have a policy on public education. This is very significant, and this was their first observation in that policy. K-12 education has not been updated in 100 years. Actually, I disagree with that. It has been updated. It's been made worse. We have added burdens on our teachers. We have added regulations on our administrators and boards of education. We've added laws that don't really help. They hurt. And it's time to do something about that. And that's what the U.S. Chamber is saying we must do. And let's look at a minute here, because we've got some good news to report. Let's look at what our country can point to that has happened in the last century that's market-driven and is, in fact, both public and private. We've got some good news from some collaborations we've had outside of public education. The Wright brothers, they were private. They figured something out. The government broke the sound barrier, and now we've got space exploration, all of which has benefited the private sector as well. I've got Velcro on my computer bag that we wouldn't have if not for the Gemini program, and many, many, many other things, not the least of which is Tang. We have all these great things that have happened because of this public-private collaboration, all of which also represent significant improvements and advancements in technology. Next slide, please. We also in communications. We started with the radio and vacuum tubes, now transistors, integrated circuits. Today we have nanotechnology. And at the push of a button, at my house in Noonan, Georgia, I have total digital communications in a little bitty town. All my information is coming through a data stream on a fiber network. I've got video and internet and email and all manner of information available at either the punch of a button, the click of a mouse, or a spoken voice command from me or my 12-year-old daughter. In fact, I think my dog did something yesterday. So, you know, it's accessible now. It's there. And, oops, it doesn't want me to end the show. Oh, I know what I've done. I've got it off there on the side at the corner there. I don't know how to get it off, Katie. There we go. And, of course, you all know the phone story. Started on the wall, then we had the ugly princess phone. But today, you have, at the palm of your hand, all the same stuff you've got in your house with that digital communications. All right. That's the public-private collaboratives. It's been very market-driven. It's all out there and happening today. And let's contrast that with public education. And I'll apologize for seeming to insult some of our panelists. I'm not. But I'm talking nationally as a trend here. What's gone on? We've gone from this to this in 100 years. That's a brand new product there that I got off the internet last week for a desk. We've gone from this to this. That is an actual pencil you can buy today. This classroom in 1909 to this classroom in 2003. Okay, now we do know there's other great things happening in education, but the U.S. Chamber was serious when it said, and it had a good point when it said, the system itself has not been updated in 100 years. What we've definitely not done is taken those market-driven principles that have clearly worked for us in our economy and our technology outside of public education and applied them to public education. That's the opportunity. And this cannot be denied. This is one of those facts we must admit before we make progress. Since 1980, the public spending on K-12 in our nation has increased 70% after adjusting for inflation. And yet, in the same period of time, in fact, in a more relevant, more recent period of time, from 92 through 2005, the NAEP scores in reading have gone down for seniors in high school. We're not getting our money's worth. We're not getting our bang for the buck. If this were a business, it'd be out of business. Would it not? Well, maybe it needs to be a business. Who are the innovators? Who is going to take us to the next level? Well, I submit you've got a panel here of innovators. You've got teachers in the Atlanta public schools who are innovators. They need to be encouraged. They need to be rewarded. They need to be funded. They need to be freed of regulation. They need to be given the opportunity to truly succeed in a meaningful way. You've got students in the Atlanta public schools who are also fearless innovators. They are not afraid of technology. You have business people, all of you here and a lot of people you know, who are interested in doing something and don't know what to do next. We need to find the innovators and give them something to do. And you're going to hear about how to do that. How to go from that pencil to this instead of another pencil. How to go from that classroom to this. That's a picture of the Guggenheim Museum in New York. All the content that's in the Guggenheim, all the exhibits, all the marvelous history and creative potential, it can be brought to every school, to every classroom, to every desk in America. We have the technology. We have the content. We have the awareness of how to do it. We don't have the people trained to do it or free to do it. And we have the students who I think want it and would use it and turn things around for themselves. Other things the U.S. Chamber said, obviously the graduation rate is low. People are not ready for college or the workplace after getting out of K-12, spending $1 billion a year remediating college students, and we are in the bottom half of developed countries in college completion. This is a great report, just came out a few months ago from the new Commission on the Skills of the American Workforce. I encourage you to get it and read it. We can help you do that if you need help, and I've got cards I'll pass out. I'll be glad to talk to anybody. Assume that we will do the job right first time. We are not truly saddled with what we have today. If we decide we want to change it, we have the wherewithal to change it. What would we do? This is a great quote I got from Carrie Lucas, who's a woman who is a brilliant writer and a leader on women's issues in this country. She asked this very relevant question. What would we do if we were designing a new education system from scratch? Would we really force all 50 million school-aged children from 5 to 17 into government schools, government-run schools assigned by zip code? Would we? You're going to hear in just a minute how, no, we won't here in Atlanta. We've got something better in mind. We will make much more efficient use of our available resources, stuff we already have. We will develop standards, assessment, curriculum that reflect today's needs, tomorrow's requirements, and we will get you to tell us what those things are. You'll also help us develop the curriculum. And we will create high-performance schools and districts everywhere, and that includes how we govern them, how we finance them, how we organize and manage them. You'll hear more about that in a minute. There is a model in Georgia. You heard Tom introduce me that I ran this model. I didn't start it. I've benefited from the great work of many people, including the guy who wrote this book, Dr. Joe Harless. Educating for Accomplished Citizenship is his subtitle. What he did and taught us to do is don't start with what you teach now. Ask the businesses what they need. Define backwards from that about economic success, build post-secondary programs, and take them to the high school level. And that's what we've done. And here's what's happened because we did it. Without going into great technical detail, I hope somebody asked a question about it, we saw a 21% increase over the district average among economically disadvantaged students who came to our school on the science graduation test, which is a state standardized academic test. And the real mind blower is we didn't teach science. Didn't have an academic science class in that school. And we were beating the county average by 21%, passing that test the first time they took it. I want to tell you how we did that. 25% student satisfaction above the district average at that school, even with the added rigor compared to the people who did not go to our school. 80 companies at that school offered job shadowing at one school in a small county. How about that? You can do a lot better here in Atlanta. My final point is, as stakeholders, we must admit this to ourselves. We are all ultimately responsible for the success of systems and of people that we support with our public and our private resources. And you're going to hear more about those private resources in just a minute and the opportunity. And I've gone over a little. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Who got the conversation going in Coweta County for Central Educational Center, and why don't they just open for the school system and for the community?
businesses got it started. They insisted that we could do a better job. They volunteered to help, much as they're doing here, much as you're doing here today. Start that conversation and worked for 3 years on a steering committee and came up with the data and did it right. Thank you.
Thank you, Russ.
Thank you very much. And again, we'll have an open forum at the conclusion, but I think Russ teed it up so appropriately as relevance and the business partnership and support, not only from the 80 businesses there, but from the shadowing and the role modeling. Speaking of relevance, it's my pleasure to introduce Tad Hutchison, Vice President of Marketing Sales, AirTran Airways. He joined them in 1997. In the interest of time, I would ask you to take a look at all of our speakers' bio in your materials. They are deep in content and most interesting. Each speaker has a very unique background. So please join me in welcoming Tad.
I was the only speaker brave enough, willing to bring the piece of cake up. So I want to know who made it, because it's really good. But I am celebrating my 10th year at AirTran Airways, and I'm Vice President of Marketing at AirTran, and it's a pleasure to be here today to talk to you. Just a couple of brief, I got a lot to cover, so I'm going to give you a couple of brief points on the airline and talk about the challenges of hiring at AirTran. That's something we do every single week. We're 14 years old this year. So we're next year will be a big one, 15, right? We have 142 airplanes, 8,600 employees. We serve 56 cities, and we're up to almost 800 flights a day. In the general scheme of things, we're the 10th largest airline in the United States. We're the 50th largest airline in the world. We're a $2 billion company, and we are 881 or something on the Fortune 1000. So small in our industry, but relatively big company out there. We hire system-wide, and everything has to come to Atlanta. Just like, as a passenger, everybody has to come to Atlanta. Our training centers are in Atlanta, and if we hire somebody in New York, Boston, LA, San Francisco, wherever, they come to Atlanta for training. So every Monday we start a training class. Last Monday we had a record 152 people in the class. So this looks like about an average new hire training class at AirTran. Every Monday you'd have pilots, flight attendants, mechanics, gate agents, ramp agents, everything all mixed in together for the first day of corporate orientation, and they go their separate tracks. And pilots are anywhere from 3 to 4 months. Flight attendants are 6 weeks. Reservation agents are 2 weeks. It just depends on the track and the job that you have hired for. But just a couple of things. We're hiring so many different types of people. You've got the skilled workers, which are generally considered to be the technical workers, which are the pilots, the mechanics, the dispatchers, what have you. And we're getting a good source of those type of jobs from the military. Military is still producing enough retirements where people have worked in the military for 6, 8, 10 years, and then they've been discharged. They come work for AirTran, and we've done really well there. We've also supplemented those efforts by going to places like Georgia Tech and pulling engineers out of Georgia Tech and working with them in co-op programs and what have you. But really the majority of what I'm going to focus on is on the rest of the workforce, which are the flight attendants, the gate agents, the ramp agents, baggage service agents, the reservation agents. Those are the ones that primarily interface with the customers and the ones we end up hiring quite a bit of. And what we have found, and it was over in our training and education center the other day talking to the people that do the recruiting, and what we have found for the rest of these workers, we have a very different standard. Sometimes it's very frustrating to us competing with other businesses in Atlanta because we have higher standards, not because we're AirTran, but because of the FAA, the Department of Homeland Security, et cetera. Now, what I mean by that is we can only hire U.S. citizens. Okay, so that knocks a lot of the people out that that are over here that perhaps could work for somebody else but can't on a visa or what have you, or a green card. Can't hire those type of individuals. So that knocks people out. Department of Homeland Security has very stringent requirements. We cannot hire anyone that's been convicted of certain crimes, and no felon, certain misdemeanors. And then you get into FBI background checks. So what happens when you have an open house and you have 500 people show up for an open house, and then you start to go over, you have to be a U.S. citizen, you end up losing a few, and then you say, well, you've got, you can't have a certain types of misdemeanors or felonies, that you lose a few more. Then you roll out the fingerprint machine, and they realize they got to do their fingerprints. A few more, we take a break. Some people go to the bathroom and never come back, right? And so it really weeds down the candidate pool. Then when we get down to the candidates that we're actually interested in, you've got to have a certain amount of education level and what have you. We give them a battery of tests, and if they were able to pass those basic skills tests, then we consider them for a job interview, and then we end up interviewing them. Just to give you an example of how competitive, for example, in a couple of areas, last year AirTran hired 250 pilots. We had 8,300 applications. So you can see I don't even take pilot resumes anymore. When I used to go out and people, I got a friend that's a pilot, and they give me a resume. I'm like, you just apply online, because I was disappointing so many people. But, well, why didn't you hire my grandson, or you didn't hire my friend, or you didn't hire my, just apply the regular way, and the system will work its way through. But in terms of reservation agents, we hired 150 reservation agents last year. We had over 11,000 people apply for that job. So just to show you the type of, we're able to pick and choose, which is we're in a good position. We're able to, we're not out there where we're desperate. We've had times before we've had more jobs than we've had candidates, but we don't have a problem with the candidate pool. Once we get them through the battery of tests, and then we end up offering them employment, what happens is we tell them, okay, this is the airline business. It's not based on merit, like a lot of your businesses may be, where if you do really well, you move up. The airline business is the old-fashioned way. It's based on seniority. It's based on the date you were hired. And if this were the class, you're all hired on the same day, the oldest person in the class gets the most seniority. It goes to the youngest person. So the oldest person in the class would be the first one, and it goes all the way down to the youngest person. That's how it works. Everything is based on seniority. So when people think, I want to go work in the airline business, that's great. I ask over there, let's say I want to be an entry-level ramp agent, working on the ramp, tossing bags, marshaling planes in and out, and doing all the logistics associated with getting the airplane in and out, cargo bags, lavatory, etc. The current schedule, if I were to pass the test, get in class, and meet all the requirements, I would have Tuesdays and Wednesdays off. And I would start at 3:30 in the afternoon, and then in the airline business, there's an acronym. I mean, we got our own vocabulary, if you will. But the end time is RON, run, or remain overnight, which means are all the airplanes in. When the last airplane comes in that's supposed to remain overnight in Atlanta, then you can go home. So there is that could be 12:30, it could be 1:30, it could be 2:30, it could be 3:30, depending on what time the last airplane, you stay till the last airplane comes in. And of course, there's overtime if you work more than 40 hours, but that's kind of the way it is. So you're working outside, it may rain, it may snow, it may, it may not snow in Atlanta, but, you never know. But you're out there with all the elements. And then all of a sudden, you get hired, you think, I'm working for AirTran, this is great, but your buddies have got Saturday and Sunday off. And they're going to the football game, the Falcons game, and, you can go, but you got to leave at halftime to make it to your job. Or then you got to call in sick. And then, it's like, all of a sudden you're like, I don't know if I like this too much. So that is huge. But one of the things I ask the training group, and we have a large training staff over there, what are you seeing with the new hires we're bringing in? What is it that you see? And it wasn't the usual, they lack skills, they can't read, they can't write, it wasn't what you would expect. It was they lack drive, they lack motivation, They want instant gratification. They want to work 9 to 5 and have Saturdays and Sundays off. Well, we're in a 24/7 business. You know, very few of us in the airline business have Saturdays and Sundays off. Most of us work Saturdays and Sundays. Sunday's the busiest day of the week for the airline business, whether you knew it or not. It is our busiest day. Friday's our second busiest day. So most everybody works on Sundays, and most everybody works on Fridays. So the other thing they told me was lack of soft skills. They do not know how to interact with the customers to which you're accustomed. And that is an issue. So one of the things that we spend an awful lot of time doing, once they go through our regular training program, then they go into the departments. The departments end up hiring or having classes to train them on these soft skills, how to interact with a customer, you know, rather than say no problem, you know, say my pleasure, things like that. So I mean, we've done quite a few different training programs. But I want to give you a couple of examples. We actually work with the Metro Atlanta Chamber of Commerce and placing a rest center. We have 3 rest centers all in Georgia. So we promise if you call AirTran Airways, that we will not go to India or Jamaica or China or wherever else. It'll go to Georgia. But we worked with the Metro Atlanta Chamber of Commerce, and we ended up with an experiment, and it has worked fabulously. We put a reservation center in Carrollton, Georgia, which is just west. I think that it's west of here, right? Okay. I don't know my geography really well, but it's west of here, about an hour. And we put it on the campus of the State University of West Georgia. One of the things about airline reservations is we never know when the peak is. Now, I told you Sunday is our busiest day for travel. Tuesday's our busiest day for reservations. Tuesday is the weakest day in the airline business for travel, but it's the busiest day for reservations. It's bizarre. But we have, on this college campus, we have partnered with the State University of West Georgia, put in a center there where we have 150 seats to take calls. We're able to text the students on their cell phone. And we basically send a 4-letter text, NN, HP. NN in the airline business is need, HP is help. Need help. They get their cell phone, it goes off, need help, they come to the center, and they log in, and they work. And then we tell them, hey, the call volume's died down. Do you want to leave? Okay, yeah, I need to go study, you know, or I need to go see my friends. It has been very, very innovative. And that's something we worked out with the Metro Atlanta Chamber of Commerce, which actually was very, very beneficial for an airline to put a reservation center on a college campus. It pays the same as our other centers. It's $9.50 an hour, I believe, somewhere in that neighborhood, with flight benefits and medical benefits on the college campus. I know when I was in college, if I made $9.50 an hour, I would have thought I'd died and gone to heaven. So, you know, but it works really well because they are extremely flexible. They can come work when you need them, and then they can leave when you don't. It's hard in a full-time center when you have people that drive in and you say, okay, it's 11 o'clock, the phones are dead, go home for a couple hours, we'll call you back when we need you. That doesn't work. So we have different skills. We have one on the military base in Savannah, and we have military wives. They know the geography of Afghanistan and Iraq, and yet they don't know the geography of the states as well. You know, you have to tell them that Newark is near LaGuardia, which is near White Plains, etc. So, and then you have one in Atlanta, and the Atlanta Center is 98% single mothers. So most of them are working 2 jobs, and we're having to train them. We're willing to train people, but they've got to be motivated. If they're willing to learn, we'll train them. We can teach them the airline business, but we need people that are motivated and willing to work. And we've partnered with a lot of other organizations. I see Donna Buchanan here from Junior Achievement. That has been great, partnering with Junior Achievement and bringing in kids from schools at early ages to show them. You've probably been on the concourse one day where you've seen a 3rd grader or 4th grader or 6th grader or even a 9th or 10th grader make the announcements. And they're kind of clumsy, and they stand up. This flight's getting ready to go to, where is it going? It's going to Miami. But the kids are practicing, and they see what it's like to actually work at the airport. And that's been very helpful to get kids motivated to hopefully one day join AirTran Airways. So with that, I know my time is up, so thank you very much.
Any questions?
Any questions?
Any questions? Yes, back here.
Well, the airline business is considered highly skilled. The workers are, I mean, in terms of if you were to, I mean, I'm sure Sam has some classification system. If you were to take the airline industry, they're considered highly skilled. I would say that a good majority of your flight attendants have a college degree. A lot of your technical workers have some type of technical degree or technical background. Most of the pilots have college degrees now. So you're probably looking at. I mean, this is venturing a guess. I'd say about 60% have more than high school, and 40% have a high school education. So.
Yes, over here.
Yeah.
You mentioned soft skills are missing. How do you bridge that gap? How do we bridge that gap?
You know, that is a very good question. We have been working with Clayton County pretty closely. We pull a lot of kids out of Clayton County schools because our main office is in Clayton County. We've worked with Atlanta Public Schools, and I think it's, the two things that we're seeing is instant gratification. They come in day one and they want the top job, and the other thing is they come in and they don't have the skills that you would expect that they would have for the job that they're employed to do. And then you realize we just put them out there dealing with customers, and they didn't handle that situation the way that we would have hoped they would have handled it. So you have to go back and educate them. Many cases, sometimes they get defensive, but in many cases they're great. Oh, I didn't realize that there wasn't a training. So and I don't think that's from the school system. I think that's more from the family and the home and the parents. But we have found that we basically run all of the new reservation agents, through this soft skills course in the reservation centers. Once they finish their technical and company training, they go through soft skills, how to address customers, and how to be polite, and it's manners and soft skills. It's dealing with people, because in the end of the day, that's what we are, a service business.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, and thank AirTran for all that you have done for the Chamber. Thinking about our sponsor, AT&T, so far you're 2 for 2. We've had a picture of a telephone up there, and now we call the students by texting them and tell them to do something, right?
Come to work.
Come to work. That is innovation, indeed, so you should be feeling mighty good. What a privilege and pleasure to introduce Dr. Hall, and again, I commend you to her information in the materials, of which I cannot begin to repeat, but it's worthy of study. A picture is worth 1,000 words, and I think as she joined us and is the Urban Superintendent of the Year, it's a great gift for our community to have Dr. Hall, because it all begins with leadership. But if you visit her conference room, and you'll see with great pride the glisten in her eye to see the charts of improvement in the school system here, because that is investing in our youth, and it's their improvement. And now she has a new target in her sights of high school transformation. And to talk about responding to the challenge, please welcome Dr. Beverly Hall.
Thank you, Tom, and good afternoon. I want to begin by thanking again the Metro Atlanta Chamber of Commerce. I see Sam snuck in, Sam Williams, and everyone here for inviting me to participate today, inviting Atlanta Public Schools to participate. I also want to take a minute before I respond to the challenge to acknowledge, even though they did stand before the board members who are here today, because much of what I'm going to talk about could not occur if I did not have a board that was supportive of the direction of the district and who are willing to put the resources behind what we're trying to do. So with us, we have Vice Chair Mr. Emmett Johnson. I'll just stand and I'll recognize them all, Ms. Yolanda Johnson and Ms. Cecily Harshkanen, and I thank them for their work on behalf of the children. When I sit here and hear and listen again to information about the national trends regarding the employability rates and the declining skill levels of the new cohorts in the nation's workplace, it is clear to me more than ever that it's time for a united, strategic, and focused collaboration between this or among the city's business leaders, the civic leaders, and our public education system. It was, believe it or not, 8 years ago when I came to this room to speak for the first time to the business leaders in Atlanta. And it was standing room only. There are a few of them here who were there then. Mike Trotter was here, Jim Bostic was here, and Al, you might have been here, I can't recall, but there were so many people in that room. And they were all here because they were very, very concerned about exactly what we've been hearing about so far this morning. They were also here to say that in Atlanta, the business leaders wanted to do whatever they could to be supportive. I went to a conference 2 weeks ago in the nation's capital where the First Lady Laura Bush and the Secretary of Education spoke to us along with 3 governors, and there was a lot of media. We had Time Magazine, we had CNN, we had MTV. And again, they were focusing on the fact that less than 70% of our students graduating from high schools are adequately prepared for successful entry into the workplace. In actuality, the silent epidemic is that 1 million children are dropping out of school, high school, every year in this country. And they focused on the fact that we do need all of our students to be educated to high levels. As you just heard, they must have post-secondary readiness. It is the highest priority in the country, and I'm here to tell you today that that has become the highest priority for Atlanta Public Schools. Now, this current focus on high schools is a natural progression of the systemic organizational improvement that has been the focus since my arrival in the district in 1999. Many of you will know that we came in with a comprehensive reform agenda. We focused on the elementary schools very intensively because it is still my belief that the victory will be won in the elementary schools in grades K through 3. And we began to set about transforming the district one classroom at a time, one school, one student at a time. And of course, you all know the good news. We're very proud of it, and we should be. Many, many, many of our schools, almost all of them, are making adequate yearly progress under the AYP, or AYP under the Federal No Child Left Behind Act. And every year, even this year, we continue to increase test scores dramatically. At the elementary level, we've just about eliminated the gap with the state, and now we're looking to exceed the state in terms of the number of children exceeding the state average. In addition, over the past 7 years, we have also been making progress at the middle and high schools. Attendance is up, way up. Just so you know, when I got to Atlanta, 66% of the high school students were missing 10 or more days every year. 45% of the middle school students were missing 10 or more days of school every year. And 33% of our elementary school students were missing 10 or more school days per year. Those numbers, when you come into my office, as Tom just said, have dramatically improved. So yes, we have been making progress at all grade levels. On the Georgia high school graduation test, our scores are at an all-time high. They're going to be released soon. You're going to be amazed. But we're still not pleased. We still have a long way to go because as the state finally begins to roll out more rigorous tests, more rigorous requirements, you're going to see that where we are 97 or 98% on the Georgia high school graduation test, we're 52 or 53% on those more rigorous assessments. And until our students can meet and pass those rigorous assessments, they will not be prepared to do the kinds of jobs that's required by the business community because they will not be able to go on to post-secondary options and compete. Of course, again, we're proud of the progress, but our goal is to graduate 90% of Atlanta's high school students in 4 years prepared for post-secondary options. Right now, we're at the national average. Across the country, most urban systems are graduating only 50% of African American and Hispanic students in 4 years. We're in Atlanta are graduating 68%, but we still have a long, long way to go to reach that 90%, and that's the purpose of what you're about to hear about today. We began to look at this whole transformation of high schools 2 years ago when we opened the new schools at Carver. Again, Carver was synonymous, the high school, Carver High School was synonymous with failure. Scores were the lowest in the state of Georgia. Most of the parents who were zoned for that school would do anything rather than send the children to that school. And the students who unfortunately ended up going there, many of them never graduated. And so we said if we can do something with Carver, we can absolutely be clear that we can do something with every other high school in Atlanta. And I smile again because there are people in this room like Dr. Bostic who always says, Beverly, why are you taking on the toughest challenge? When I talked about Project Grad when I came and said we were going into the lowest performing schools, he said, why don't you take one in the middle? Think your chances of, we need some wins here. Get some, not even low-hanging fruit, but some places where there's some possibilities of reaching the fruit. And I said, no, because if we do it with the bottom, it takes away that all the excuses and it changes the conversation. So here we went with Carver. And now with just 2 years under its belt, the new schools at Carver have begun to show remarkable improvements in academic achievement as well as with students pursuing post-secondary options. First and foremost, enrollment has doubled on the campus since the first year of implementation. I always say parents, regardless of socioeconomic status, they know when schools are not working. And they're very creative about getting students out of those schools. Well, Carver had only 300 students, 9 through 12, a little over 300 when we transformed it. This year we had over 700 students on that campus, and this is the second year of the transformation. More importantly, this past year we had 19 sophomores already taking courses at Georgia State. Next year, 86 students will be enrolled at Georgia State, and by the time they graduate in June of 2009, 90% of the students in the early college school will have completed 60 college credits. This is the same Carver. Children haven't changed, neighborhood haven't changed. What changed? And that's what we're going to tell you about when we talk about high school transformation. Even the old school, quote unquote, the senior academy, expectations have so changed. And we've also, of course, changed leadership and teachers. The graduation rate went from 36% in the spring of 2005, not going back very far, to 61.4% in the spring of 2006. Attendance is up. Parent participation is up. One of our small schools has almost 95% of the parents enrolled in the PTA. And the culture is completely different. Now, the beginning success of the new schools at Carver is largely due to a collaborative effort between the local community and the school district. And that's why we're here today. We established partnerships. We have initiatives and programs that really link our students to the real world in which they will have to live and work. And I want to mention a few of those partnerships. We've had, of course, the partnership with Georgia State University, where they're actually working with our teachers to make sure that the students are prepared for their college courses. We have a wonderful relationship with Turner Broadcasting, where they're linked with the Arts High School. We have Bell South that was very, very involved in the design and execution of the curriculum and the supports at the Technology High School on Carver. These are 4 small schools. We will have at the end no more than 400 students. We're growing them 1 grade at a time from 100 in the 9th grade on through to the 12th grade. We have linkages with Emory University, Morehouse School of Medicine, all linked again to the school that has a focus on health, sciences, and research. And we have the Arts School again with the Urban Youth Harp Ensemble linked to the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra, and we have partners such as Junior Achievement, SunTrust Bank, and the Arthur M. Blank Foundation that are linked with all of the academies, all of the schools. And the design of the high school transformation includes linking every single small high school with business partners so that the students will see the relationship and the relevance of their coursework with what is required when they eventually go into the world of work. It is integral to the design of the small schools. So the New Schools at Carver is just our first step in our response to this challenge. We are now committed through the support of the Gates Foundation, which, as you all know, just gave us the $10.5 million grant on top of a $1.4 million planning grant that we used to do the research that led to what we're talking about today. We're now committed to transforming all 10 of Atlanta's comprehensive high schools into small schools or small learning communities. You're going to hear a little bit in detail why we think this is best. But it has everything to do with responding to the challenge that we must produce more qualified students and we must provide them with rigorous coursework. Next year, the beginning in this August, we will be transforming Farrell High School and South Atlanta High School into 4 small schools each. They'll have their own principal, their own dedicated staff. They have chosen their themes or their career focus area from a library of themes, and that library of themes was put together. The career focus areas were chosen when we asked McKinsey, as a part of the Gates grant, to tell us what will the labor market look like in this region 10 years from now. Where will the jobs be? When we put together a library of themes from which the schools can select their area of career focus. While we're moving toward Farrell and South Atlanta becoming 4 small schools, we will also be spending the year with Douglas, Southside, and Washington high schools, meeting with their design teams, their business partners, figuring out what will they look like when the following year, 08-09, they are transformed. And then when they are transformed, the last wave of schools, North Atlanta, Grady, and Mays, will be designing and then transforming themselves into small learning academies. I want you to know that while we're doing this, because we know small leads to personalization, it leads to better relationship, it leads to better attendance, better parental engagement, we also are addressing the quality of teaching. Because if we get teachers who go into those small schools and still do not teach to high standards, still don't do the instruction in a way that engages the students so they want to learn, we're not going to, at the end, be any better off. The good news is we're coming into the small school movement later than most urban areas. When I got here in 1999, some of you know I was frustrated because I couldn't get Gates to look at us. Because in New York, when I left in New York in 1995, the small schools movement was off and running. And then they took off to Chicago, to LA, to Boston, and I kept saying, there's a place in the Southeast called Atlanta, and why can't we get some money to even begin to think about it? But they, at that time, to their credit, said, look, we're trying to figure out if this is really working, and we don't want to take on any other cities. It turned out to be a blessing. Lots of lessons learned from those other systems. I have had extensive dialogue during the planning phase with my colleagues and counterparts in these districts, and we're going to bring some of that in through technical assistance providers so that we don't repeat some of the errors that were made before. Key one being that we must change the way in which instruction is delivered. We must make sure it's relevant, that the students see a relationship to the real world, and we must make sure that those relationships in those small schools work well. So we are off and running with high school transformation. We're not letting go of the elementary. The victory has to be won, as I said there, and the better prepared they are, the more they're going to demand of the high schools. If those children arrive at the middle and high schools and they're reading and they're doing math above grade level, which is our goal, and they find these high schools that are totally unresponsive, they're going to not want to go. Hence the dual enrollment on the college campuses, hence all of the relationships we must have for them to visit your jobs, for you to allow them to see what's required so they can stay engaged with us and complete their high school diploma. We are fortunate also today to have joined in the Atlanta Public Schools team someone who was involved in the small schools work in San Diego. San Diego, again, was ahead of us doing this work, and we did a national search to find an associate superintendent for high school transformation who would, again, come in, hit the ground running, work with a team that I've been very proud of that has done a lot of the work prior to his arrival, but now to help us to move forward, putting together all the moving parts. And I don't want to take away at all from his presentation because I've been known to do that. I'm going to stop, and I'm going to introduce to you the new Associate of High Schools, Rod Atterbury, and at the end of his presentation, we'll be delighted to take any questions.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak before you and see a lot of familiar faces. And I won't be redundant here too much with Dr. Hall. She sort of stole a bit of my thunder, but a couple observations as I listened to the national perspective and some of the work that Russ described and Tad and others. But this whole notion of we have a lack of change in the last 100 years, that 100% of the jobs in the future are going to require some post-secondary education. That there's really a lack of motivation, that we have this crisis, not of intelligence necessarily, but of relevance. We have a shortage of soft skill ability in our students. Good chocolate cake, thanks. I stole a bite there, that was pretty good. Heard about the telephones, that was good too. We also heard, and very clearly, about this national crisis around high school dropouts. 30% of our students not making it across the graduation stage. And having sat through 4 of them so far, and tonight we'll be through the last of the group of 6. Missed a couple of them last week, but we have an important challenge. We have a goal, and if I could, I guess I got the slide control here, don't I? Let's see if I can make this work. Maybe. Okay. Our goals, just real clearly, or quickly, is to lead the nation in the graduation rate. Dr. Hall's made it very clear that we are going to hit a goal of at least 90% of our 9th grade students making it across that graduation stage 4 years later. We're going to make sure that all of our students are ready for college and career. And I want to emphasize the word and. We're not talking about or anymore. The jobs in the future are going to require both. It's not going to be a matter of segregating some students because of ability into one particular area or another. We have to make sure that all of our students are ready. We're not going to make that choice for them. They will select themselves later in life. We want to be sure that what we do is prepare them for that future workforce, as Russ described. Make sure that we are the first choice of parents. As Dr. Hall said, those Carver parents were very clever on getting themselves out of that zone. And now we're seeing some very clever people trying to get back in that zone. So it's becoming a school of choice and it becoming very popular. A world-class educational experience. And what I mean by that is that students are going to, beyond their natural means of living in their neighborhoods and maybe not getting out of those neighborhoods, we are going to get them the experiences of traveling, getting out into the community, out into businesses, into companies and colleges and universities that they had no idea even existed, much less that they had the opportunity to go and attain. Talking with Graham in the 21st Century Atlanta Scholars Program and the opportunity to send students to little Ivy colleges, that students had no idea that they had the means to do that, and yet we can do that very easily. Here's our major challenge. Dr. Hall talked about all 10 of our high schools being changed, transformed into this new thing. The problem is the old large comprehensive high school that you and I went to basically doesn't work anymore. It's a product of the past. It's one of those areas, and I used to say if you exhumed a body that died 100 years ago, that'd be the one place they'd feel very comfortable in living, in the high school. And Russ, you kind of backed that up in your statements as well. It hasn't changed much, especially at the high school level. There's been a lot of changes across, but the large impersonalness of high schools are what causes things like school shootings, where students are lost, they act out, they're hidden, and nobody takes responsibility, or why 30, 40, 50, and sometimes even higher percentages of students don't make it. Because nobody takes responsibility for them, they hide. Teachers hide in those environments as well. Lack of consistent rigor and engaging curriculum. We heard that notion about students are not engaged. Our workforce is not engaged sometimes. And limited connection with the student's experience. Let me just give you kind of the structural thing. This is something that Larry Rosenstock, that opened a very successful charter school in San Diego, said, Rob, there's not enough dynamite you can strap to your back to change a high school. And But we're trying. And what we're doing is literally going in and exploding or blowing out the walls of our traditional high schools, breaking them down and recreating them into 4 small schools or 6 small schools, schools of no more than about 400 students each, with a foundation of student support and in the instructional foundations of making sure our teachers are prepared, are preparing our students, that they are bringing intellectually challenging lessons to those small schools. But the design is to actually take that large campus and with under that same old roof, creating 4 small schools or as many as 6 at Douglas High School that has 2,400 students. The idea is to have a mentoring program, 4-year teacher advisory for our students, on track to graduation plans in place, post-secondary plans in place for all of our students so that they know what they're going to do. They set their goal. Each of these schools has a theme. We'll get into the themes in just a second, but that's the hook and the relevance piece. And what I've found is that when you have a hook and it's relevant to the students, you can set those plans forward, and they have a purpose to go to college. They have a purpose to want to pursue training at a technical college or in the military or wherever that might be. Rigorous, engaging, project-based, authentic curriculum with authentic assessments. We want our students to do the work you do. We want them to be experiencing what you do on a daily basis in your jobs and in your walks of life. We believe high school students can do it, and maybe even do it better than we can, because they think outside the box. They're much more technically savvy than we are, and we want to give those opportunities. And the way to do that is through a 4-year career-focused theme where we can connect the students directly to that theme, prepare them not only for college, but for the career in which that theme represents. Each of our small schools will have a thematic focus, a business community advisory board. We can't make these relevant and connected to the industries like AirTran and others without having your input on the get-go, from the get-go, to be sure that it's connected to and relevant to the preparation you need, not only in soft skill, but in the technical and foundation skills. What kind of reading and writing do you do? What kind of math do you use? How can we bring that to the classroom to be sure it's relevant and connected? Oops, I'm sorry, didn't mean to push the button here. Let me see if I can go back. Project-based instruction. Problems, projects students will be engaged in. Work-based learning experiences, getting students out of the classroom and into job shadowing experiences. You heard that earlier as well mentioned with Russ's presentation. Getting students into internship opportunities and mentoring opportunities, and as well as authentic assessments through student exhibitions of work. Actually having students stand up and present to a panel of industry people about a problem they have solved for that particular industry, challenging them to go deeper, to apply the academic knowledge they have directly to a skill. I believe, it's my theory of action, that the reason why we have so many students graduating and going on to college and needing remedial instruction is they've never had the opportunity to apply the knowledge, so they didn't retain the knowledge. And that's Rob speaking, but that's the theory I operate on, and so I want to be sure that what we do is authentic and that it's relevant and it engages students and motivates them, and they apply it so they'll retain it. And one last bullet I didn't add to this slide, and that is, and this is so important, we want to make sure that our students have some college experiences as well, and to be sure that they have some relevant college classes. We actually, as Dr. Hall said, in our early college program at Carver, School of Early College, students are actually taking and passing at high rates college-level classes. And so we're working with our university partners, and those of you who are here from universities, we'd love to connect with you in greater ways as we roll this out across Atlanta Public Schools. Just by way of some themes, these are the various themes that we have selected for our Wave 1 schools, and there's going to be a call to action here in just a second where these themes will be listed, but things like law and government, engineering, health sciences, business entrepreneurship, arts, technology, and leadership and economic empowerment are some of the various themes that we are rolling out across the system. Let me just talk a little bit about this theme integration piece. Typically, high schools are organized into very specific content areas. You probably remembered 7:30 in the morning the bell rings and you were off to math class. And when the bell rang at 8:30, math gets shoved in the backpack or into the locker or out the window, and on to science. And there was never any notion that the science teacher or the math teacher ever talked to each other. As a matter of fact, probably never, except maybe at faculty luncheon at the end of the year, which I think we've got a few schools celebrating that today, I think. And for sure, the English teacher never talked to the math teacher because, man, those math teachers, they're weird. And social sciences and English teachers sometimes would get together, but the idea is to take the theme and drive it through this as a high-velocity arrow would pierce a set of hay bales. And if you think of the physics of that, if you could jam an arrow through 4 hay bales that were sitting out in the field with enough velocity, you could push them together, and the fibers would begin to intertwine. And as that arrow pierces the center, some of those fibers from one bale go into the next bale, into the next bale, into the next bale, with the hope and the target at the end being prepared for college and career. I'm going to show a quick video, and if we could roll the tape, so to speak. I guess we don't roll tapes anymore, do we? We roll discs or spin discs or spin the disc.
Spin the disc.
Do we have the audio?
Of all public high school students fail to graduate with their class. Although the case for dropouts varies, this clearly presented a dilemma that Atlanta Public Schools could no longer ignore. To counter this challenge, an unprecedented model of reform was launched, which included a systemic approach to high school transformation. Over a 5-year period, all of its high schools will undergo a process of transformation, yielding small, personalized environments with rigorous teaching and learning focused on preparing all students for multiple post-secondary options. Superintendent Dr. Beverly L. Hall sums it up best.
We must engage the students, keep them involved, and we have to have them know that we know who they are, we know what their needs are. So the small school design is meant to create a more personalized setting.
3 schools have started the transformation process. At South Atlanta High School, 9th grade small learning communities begin each day with inquiry-based forums that promote strong relationships, shared accountability, and most importantly, high instructional expectations.
When I encounter a challenge, I will be there. When I encounter injustice, I will work to make change. When I encounter positive individuals, I will develop meaningful relationships. I will become a leader in all that I do.
I know today is Thursday, and this is the last day to turn in assignments. That is a town hall meeting that we hold every morning in place of homeroom. And the idea there is that being a small learning community, we can work with that small size and create kind of a community feel. So students come in there, and we have all the faculty there, all the students there, and that's where, instead of making announcements over an intercom, I make the announcements there. Teachers can make announcements, students can make suggestions, and we just kind of discuss the business of the academy. One of the things that makes this unique as well is we have a group of really talented young teachers that are really passionate about teaching. And they have, we've been able to bring in teachers that were all passionate about law and social justice. So even our math teacher has a social justice background. Our science teacher has a social justice background and forensic science background. So we're really able to bring together an excellent team.
The planning process at Farrell High School involves input from multiple stakeholders, all invested in creating a more dynamic instructional experience.
Primary job as principal is to ensure that all of our teachers, students, parents, community understand the transformation process.
Since we'll be in a small school, we'll become a family, which means that I'll get to travel with those students throughout their whole high school career. So I don't have to relearn the students each year like I normally do and try to figure out their family backgrounds. What are the things that I know that's going to impact their learning? I will already know that because they're my students. And it'll require me to look at their interest because they're going to be in a small school, so I just won't teach language arts the traditional way. I will have to incorporate what they're doing in their other classes as well, so it will be an integrated approach.
No, we're coming to the schools every day. We're here to come alongside of the students to make sure that they are focused, they're disciplined, they're doing everything it's going to take to become productive citizens.
Graduating senior Contessa openly expresses concern for fellow underclassmen potentially getting left behind.
It's really just going to help them to focus themselves, because right now it's either you're magnet or you're just basically going through school. They don't have any options, they don't have any direction, and there you just become unsatisfied with the way you are, with the way school's going, then you become unsatisfied with school. And once that comes, it's like, why come? Why am I here? If you don't know your purpose for being here, you're not going to work hard. You're not going to try to do anything because you can't see the end in line for you.
Carver graduate Derek George Sr. reflects with his son and current Carver student on his traditional school experience.
We had the wood technology, brick mason, welding, even cosmetology, auto mechanic. I took that up for 5 years.
Now led by 5 dynamic principals, the new schools at Carver provides a challenging and engaging atmosphere. A student's path to any occupation involves not only advanced technologies, but also other innovative instructional strategies that meet the changing demands of the competitive global workforce. A veteran Carver teacher elaborates.
On campus, it is the buildings, the change in the buildings. You have the 5 school buildings that are here. And before, what we had was the vocational classes, they were in one building, and the core classes were in another building. So we were kind of disconnected. And one thing by having the school, an entire school within a building, with the exception of, let's say, going to the gym or ROTC, is that you have all of the faculty within the same building, which really does help. The students really want to be here. They're interested in school. They're interested in what can this do to further them past high school. And so I like seeing that. I like the fact that the schools they participate in, let's say, some activities in which we have. It's a school-wide activity, and it gives the kids an opportunity in which to mix with the other the students in the other 4 schools that are here on campus. But I look at that and I see that it has made a positive impact on what I saw before in terms of the culture and the climate of the school and what I see now.
So we know that the restructuring and having a dedicated group of teachers to a dedicated group of students is important. We know that different and unique student support services to make sure each child's needs are attended to is important. And we also know that instruction and making significant changes in teaching and learning is important. But what we're finding is, as we go through our 5-year plan, it's very important to integrate all 3 of those pieces so that they're not viewed as isolated projects that we're working on, and so people can understand that all these elements together collectively work to develop this new APS student experience.
Now, most jobs are knowledge-based, global-oriented, technology-based positions, requiring a whole different kind of skill and knowledge, and schools have to respond to that. So if students don't graduate or they graduate with a diploma that has little meaning, then there's nowhere for them to go. And if schools don't change to educate all students for a different kind of world, then we're shortchanging students. So it's imperative that high schools find a way to educate all of their students, and all means students who traditionally, students of color, students from poverty, that schools might not have paid attention to in the past. Now they are expected to reach the same high expectations, and schools haven't known how to do that. So you have to think of a different model. You have to invent a different way of schooling that reaches the outcome of all students, and all students educated for the knowledge-based technology economy in which they will find themselves.
Flip back over to the PowerPoint real quick, and I'll wrap up here. I know our time is getting short. We're going in waves. The first wave, of course, you saw Carver, which in South Atlanta was featured on there as well. We had some smaller learning communities only for 9th graders last year. Now we are creating a whole 4 schools there on the South Atlanta campus, as well as 4 schools at Thurl. And then wave 2 will be Douglas, Washington, Southside, and then a future for fall of 09, Grady, North Atlanta, and Mays, which will complete our work. Our vision over the next 5 years will transform all of its large comprehensive high schools into small, personalized learning environments that provide rigorous, engaging learning opportunities for all students, preparing them for a 21st century competitive global workforce. That's our vision and mission is and part of our goal in being here today is to help bridge the gap between the Atlanta business community and the workforce needs of APS and our student population. Establish a dialogue between our leadership and you, make sure that we're hearing and bringing your input to the table, and also leveraging the membership here at the Metro Atlanta Chamber of Commerce, as well as the other business community partners. We have a number of ways to get involved, and I know Dr. Hall is going to call you to a challenge here, but if you get out your packet, I'll lead her into this. There is a call to action sheet, and it has all of our list of different themed schools, and we are looking for some specific help. And initially, our help is strictly to serve with us in an advisory capacity. We have been collecting these over the last about 4 or 5 weeks, and we are ready now to launch with our principals. So we'll be gathering together all of the folks that have volunteered so far, do some quick orientation, and talk through specific ways we can directly connect you to a school. And that's kind of the theme I have is if we can direct connect you. Isn't that an AT&T slogan from the past? If we can create a direct connect, I believe it'll be the shortest distance between you and your future workforce. So thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Again, meaningful K-12 reform takes time, it takes commitment, and it takes consistency. And the truth is that no urban system in this country has transformed its entire school system. No one has done it. But I think it can be done in Atlanta. I am really, really serious about that. Having come here from some very, very large places where you couldn't put your arms around anything, not to say that it's easy, but I know that in Atlanta we can put our arms around it. And so strong community support, I believe, is vital to sustaining our reform efforts and it will be a critical factor in reaching those goals that were just up there. I also believe that we're at a key juncture in terms of our relationship with the business community. We are building on events such as Principal for a Day, which many of you have supported, and we are building on the Atlanta Partnership for Education, which has been longstanding and effective. I think it's time now to leverage these collaborations and really create a strategic plan that will ensure a stronger alignment of our high school programs with the companies and other post-secondary institutions that are represented here today. Again, this can only be done if you understand it, embrace it, and I know that you have the moral and economic imperatives that demand that we create a new experience for our high school students. Atlanta aims to produce students who are strong academic thinkers, personal and professional leaders, lifelong learners and earners, as I always tell the kids, skilled problem solvers, effective communicators, and community-focused, globally aware citizens. And your support, again, is crucial to us being able to accomplish this vision for our students. My hope is that we will build on this relationship. Rob mentioned in his presentation that there are several opportunities to connect with this work. We hope you will think about it. And again, we'll be actually hiring within the Office of High School Transformation someone with a fixed responsibility to follow up on this component of the transformation, because the worst thing we could do is have lots of people geared up to help and then you never hear from us or there's no follow-through. So we're committed to doing that, and I just thank you for your attention today and for your continued support of Atlanta Public Schools.
Rob and Dr. Hall, thank you so very much. We have a moment for some questions. If we could, Katie, bring a microphone just up to the front, we'll pass along the table. Okay. Any questions? Yes, please. Why isn't higher education involved in this dialogue?
We are actually outreaching to higher education in this collaborative effort with our transformation of the high schools. So if you're not engaged, we'd be happy to talk and get you connected. We are having a meeting with our university partners on the 15th of June, and we've invited in various different colleges and universities that have expressed interest, and we'll be following up with that. We want to be sure that our that our programs match what the colleges are expecting as well. I think it was Rush, you had that chart, or maybe where you kind of showed we have to backward map this. Right. What is it that the workforce needs, working back through the colleges and up through into the high schools?
And I wanted to underscore that the colleges have been very involved with APS, particularly as it pertains to Project Grad, and that they have permitted us to have students on their campuses every summer. I think this week we have 800 students who will be everywhere from Oglethorpe University to Morehouse, to Clark Atlanta, to to Atlanta Technical College, all over the city. Even some will be residential at University of Georgia. So we have been engaged with them, but now we are going to be really strategically linking them to the high school transformation using the process that Rob just outlined.
Thank you. Yes, question here. Yes.
Robert, you mentioned the various themes that the schools will eventually, migrate to. I guess a couple of questions. One, how will students be able to select which theme they're going to actually be able to register for or be selected for? And then secondly, will we also see softening of the zip codes where students can actually go to school anywhere they want to go to school through the Atlanta public school system?
The process right now is we've been out doing presentations, and the new principals that have been hired as well as some partners have gone out, and we've actually gone out to each of the middle schools feeding these schools that are converting and transforming, and done presentations about those themes, sent home materials to parents. We've had parent nights, probably fewer than about 20 of them throughout the year to explain to parents what those choices are. And then an application process went out, and then it was first choice. I think we were able to get almost 100% for first choice to the school of their liking and desire. As far as the student choice piece, we do have a few processes in place in Atlanta Public Schools now, but
yes, the challenge for us, hopefully there would be a day when we would be able to have choice, because that's the model that I was used to in New York. In New York, high school students in that big system select their schools. Nobody has to go to his own school if they choose not to. The problem that we have in Atlanta is transportation. In New York, we have a robust subway system that can get kids from Queens to the Bronx if they want to go to the Bronx High School of Science. That's the challenge in Atlanta. And so as what we're providing now is choice within your zone school, continuing our magnets where there are some choices across zones, but we're finding more and more of our parents are simply choosing within their zone, and a lot of it has to do with transportation issues, because we still are going to maintain, and we should have said that somewhere, things that make high school attractive today for parents and children, which are the extracurricular things. And they want to stay and play sports, and they want to be in the band, and they want to do the cheerleading. And if they're running across town and there's not a good transportation system, we have issues. So it remains, we have to be thoughtful about how we will do that.
Yes.
Dr. Hall and APS, I strongly applaud your work that you're doing in public education. How are you preparing the children for the rigor and for this new high school reform as they're coming from the middle school?
Right. Well, they gave me a whole outline, which of course they're going to be mad at me because I skipped over half of the points. But a key point there, if I had done it, I would have done a better job of responding to that. We now are finding that most of our students are leaving elementary ready for the middle and high schools based on their current assessments. And even this year, looking at the more rigorous curriculum and assessments, the new Georgia Performance Standards and the tests, the elementary kids are doing very well. Particularly literacy. We still have some work to do in math and science, and that's another area of intense focus, K-12 for us. Having said that, they will be ready, we believe, and be even more prepared each year. The cohorts are getting stronger as the comprehensive school reform takes hold in the elementary schools. This is not that unusual even nationwide. Across the nation, we're finding the elementary school students seem to be doing well. Middle schools remain a very weak link. And so in Atlanta, again, we are looking at what needs to happen middle school by middle school so that we don't lose what they're now entering with. And again this year, the results seem to say they are building on, the children are doing better than they did before, but they still remain our weakest link. And so to that end, we've taken our lowest performing middle school, Carson, and we're converting it into 2 single-gender academies. We're admitting just 1 grade at a time, and we're going to be watching that very closely because we have the issue of the males and graduation rates, and we're going to be looking at every single middle school and putting in place what we believe are the appropriate programs there, and we're looking to link them to the themes, etc., that are being offered in their feeder high school so the kids can begin to think about what they want to do at the end of middle school. So we believe we're going to have more kids prepared. The biggest challenge is having the high schools prepared for those children when they do get there.
Yes, one last question.
Yeah, Dr. Hall, are you talking about a new kind of teacher? And if so, where are they coming from? Are our systems up to giving you the teachers you need?
Unfortunately, no. We're not getting the kind of teacher we need from our colleges and universities. I mean, it's no secret when I came here, we had an executive on loan for Bell South, my first year here, who looked at why we were having this revolving door of teachers after their first or second year in APS. And most of those teachers said that, as a matter of fact, 90% of those teachers who they were able to interview said they came from 4 area colleges totally unprepared to teach in Atlanta public schools. We know that this, again, has to do with preparing teachers for the old school, not because they're bad, the universities are bad, but because they're not focused either on what is currently required of teachers. So we have spent a lot of money, a lot of time in Atlanta retraining our teachers. And the first thing we did was to teach all of our teachers how to teach reading. If you can believe, a lot of those teachers said they came out of colleges with degrees in education and didn't know how to teach literacy. So we hired people to come in and to train our people to train them, and we've continued that over time. That's where the most of the grad dollars go, is into training teachers to teach differently. Luckily, there's a lot of ways to do that at the elementary school. We don't have we don't have as much at the high school level. And so at the high school level, again, we're going to have to train people. We're going to have to put coaches in those classrooms like we did at the elementary level. We're going to have to put math coaches, literacy coaches, all the people who can provide on-site, job-embedded professional development to change practice. Because if we do the workshop and send them back, they close the door and go back to what they've always done because it's much more comfortable. So we're just going to have to spend resources, hence the money, the $60 million we're looking to get from the foundations to support this transformation. Much of it will be going to retrain teachers. And lastly, many of those young teachers that you saw there are coming to us through Teach for America and the A+ program where we're bringing career changers in. I know that Graham Batch is coming in after we were spending Boston Consulting. Now he's coming in through Teach for America to teach. And some of them are becoming principals as well. And so we're using that mechanism to recruit people who normally would not come to Atlanta Public Schools, and we're just casting a wide net. But the truth be told, much of the training will have to be done here with what we have because we're just not getting the numbers coming out of the schools of education that we would like.
Thank you very much. Our panelists will be available after, at respect of your time. I do want to move towards adjournment, but I just truly, on behalf of the Chamber, thank the 4 of you for your thoughtful comments, your support, preparation. Dr. Hall, it's a busy time for graduation, and Rob, and being here today, and if my math is right, twice as many Carver students are walking that pathway today, which is an inspiration. And leadership is about passion, as we've all read, and think of the accomplishments at the elementary and middle school in the last 6 years to be awarded Urban Superintendent of the Year, and you heard her passion for the future. So much is yet to do. We're here to support you, and Rob, again, so welcome you and your family here as well. I'll be popular tonight at home. We have a son that's a junior at Wake Forest, and he's the campus coordinator for Teaching America. And so he's reading the books and being educated, and so I'll tell him of the reference today. Bless you, Ted. And so I think we all can participate in one way. Rob and I have a new announcement for this. We've been through the cycle of asking you to sign up, so if you have a family member or friend that has a birthday coming up, sign them up, okay, and tell them this is your gift to them, that they are now part of this wonderful movement. Yes? Phone a friend. Phone a friend, that's right, phone a friend. And then how appropriate to end with the thanks again to our elected officials and all that you all do every single day. Thank you for your presence here today. And to our sponsor, who without AT&T, if I stuttered enough, we'll remember the name, AT&T, and all that you do, Pete, please take the word back again, how much we appreciate your allowing us to come together on behalf of the future of our youth today. Thank you, everybody, for your attendance.
Into 4 small schools, dedicated principal, dedicated staff, or their chosen, their themes, or their library focus area, from the library themes put together, the library focus together, the career and focus areas were chosen, where we ask seconds as a part of the labor market, tell us why in the labor market look like in this region, where 10 years from now, where will the jobs be? How will we put together a library theme there with our schools into their career while we're moving toward federal and South America implementing the coming for next years. We will also be spending the year with Washington, Southside, and Washington. Their design team, their business meeting with their design teams, now business partners, they look figuring out what will they look like when the following year, 0809, they are transformed. And when they are transformed, the last wave of schools, North Atlanta Grady, will be designed and will be designed and then transforming themselves into small. I want you to know that while we're doing this, because we don't small personalization, it needs to have relationship, engagement, we also better engagement, we also addressing the teachers, if we get teachers who go into those small standards and still do not teach the high standards,